Before we begin, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts and subscribe for more HFY stories. Your support keeps these tales alive and growing. The jungle whispered in voices Elias Ward had learned to mistrust. Each rustle might be wind, each creak of vine might be the weight of some unseen beast, but to a scout there was no excuse in assuming. He kept low, rifle slung across his back, machete in hand, eyes sweeping the alien undergrowth. His boots sank half an inch into damp soil with every step, and spores glittered in the air like drifting ash. A forward scout's duty was simple on paper: move ahead, map the terrain, locate hazards before the column arrived. In practice, it meant walking alone through the most dangerous corners of worlds no sane creature entered willingly. Elias had been chosen for his stubbornness more than his mettle, or so the commander teased. Humans had a way of enduring where machines failed, and the council knew it, even if they sneered while signing the orders. He adjusted his pack, feeling the familiar weight of ration bars pressing against his spine. A week's worth of survival, compressed into tasteless bricks that could keep a soldier breathing even in hell. Elias muttered to himself as he walked, half to break the silence, half to remind the jungle he was not afraid. Keep moving, Ward. One foot, then the other. The first sign came at dusk. A tree trunk thicker than any tank barrel clawed clean through. Not cut, torn. Sap still bled from the wound, glowing faintly in the dark. Around it lay fragments of armored hide from some local herbivore, the plates curled and shattered as if struck by impossible force. Elias crouched, running his hand along the shredded bark. The gouges were deep, angled, deliberate. Something enormous had passed here not long ago. He tapped the sensor on his wrist, transmitting a brief note to command: unidentified apex predator signs. Recommend reroute. The device blinked green, acknowledgement received, though Elias doubted anyone would heed his warning. Drones rarely caught such details, and to the council most scouts were expendable. Still, it was his job to see. His job to live. The night pressed down heavy, filled with the stink of damp leaves and unseen carrion. He set camp beneath an overhang of jagged rock, small stove hissing as he boiled a ration pouch. The smell was bland, the taste worse, but warmth mattered. Above him the stars looked unfamiliar, veiled in shifting clouds. Elias leaned back, chewing slowly when he heard it. A sound that froze the marrow. Not quite a growl, not quite a roar. Low, resonant, vibrating through stone and blood alike. It came from the treeline beyond his fire's reach, long and patient, like thunder holding its breath. He reached for his rifle, slow and careful, scanning the dark. Branches snapped. Not twigs, limbs thicker than his arm. The foliage parted and the predator stepped into view. It towered, broad as a shuttle's ramp, 6 limbs moving with the fluid menace of a panther scaled up tenfold. Bone ridges jutted from its shoulders, pale in the firelight, and its hide seemed made of interlocking plates. Its head was narrow, eyes set deep and glowing faintly gold. And it was bleeding. Crimson lines streaked its flank, thick enough to paint half the camp. Each breath rattled like a furnace at war with itself. Yet even wounded, the sheer power radiating from the beast made Elias's instincts scream to run. No one survived facing something like this. Not prey, not hunter, not even soldiers in powered armor. He did not move. His training had taught him that panic killed faster than claws. Slowly, Elias lifted the rifle, sighting along the barrel. One shot wouldn't do much, he knew. At best, he might irritate it. At worst, he would invite the charge. His finger hovered near the trigger as the predator swayed, glaring at him through the firelight. And then something shifted. The beast stumbled, lowering itself heavily onto its forelimbs. Its breathing grew ragged, harsh, and Elias realized with a shock, it wasn't here to hunt him. It was dying. For a long moment the world narrowed to 2 creatures in a clearing. One armed, fragile, yet standing, the other colossal, armored, and broken. Elias's chest tightened, a war of instinct and reason. He could kill it now. The council would call him a hero. His name would be etched into reports, proof humanity could fell nightmares. Instead, his hand drifted from the rifle to his pack. He unzipped the side pocket, pulled free a ration bar. He held it up, unwrapped, the compressed brick of protein catching the fire's light. Slowly, deliberately, Elias placed it on the ground between them. The predator's eyes followed the motion. A growl rumbled from its chest, uncertain, testing. Elias did not flinch. He pushed the ration forward with the edge of his boot, then leaned back, palms open, weapon at his side. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. The creature lowered its massive head, nostrils flaring. Its teeth, long as knives, gleamed. Then it opened its jaws and, with a carefulness that stole Elias's breath, closed them around the ration bar. A crunch, a swallow. The golden eyes lifted to meet his again. Elias forced a grin, though sweat chilled his skin. Not much of a meal, huh? But it'll keep you standing. The predator blinked, slow, deliberate. It made a sound like stone grinding over stone, and for the first time Elias thought he saw something behind the hunger. Not animal instinct. Recognition. He reached into his medkit, hands trembling. Gauze, sealant spray, a field injector. You let me, I can stop the bleeding. He spoke as though to a wounded comrade. The predator did not move as he edged closer, step by step, until he could see the ragged wound torn across its flank. Alien tissue twitched, struggling to knit. Elias pressed the sealant nozzle and hissed the foam across the gash. The beast growled, low and warning, but it did not strike. Minutes passed, each longer than the last. When the wound was bound and the bleeding slowed, Elias backed away, palms raised. The predator's breathing eased. Its golden eyes never left him. Then, with a guttural rumble that shook the ground, the creature rose. It turned, limping toward the trees, massive tail brushing the earth. For a moment Elias thought it would vanish back into the jungle. But before it slipped into the dark, it paused. The great head swung back, eyes glinting in the firelight, and it stepped close enough for Elias to feel the heat of its breath. A moment of stillness. Then the beast brushed past him, a wall of muscle and bone, before fading into the night. Elias stood frozen, staring at the treeline long after it had gone. His fire crackled. The stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere in the distance, the jungle's other predators stayed silent, as though in deference. He sat back down by the fire, heart still hammering. His ration pack felt lighter. He had given away one brick of tasteless survival food, and in return, perhaps, bought something no scout had ever claimed: the attention of a nightmare. The night stretched quiet, but Elias knew sleep would not come. He had crossed a line. He just didn't yet know what waited on the other side. The morning after felt unreal. Elias rose stiff from the ground, pack half unzipped, rifle across his chest, and every sense tuned for the slightest shift of wind. He expected claw marks, trampled undergrowth, some proof the encounter had been a hallucination born of exhaustion. But the fire pit remained where he left it, ash scattered across the soil, and his ration pack was one bar short. He replayed the moment again and again as he walked. The beast's eyes had not been dull with hunger or frenzy. They had studied him. In them he had seen thought. The council called such predators world eaters, fit only to be eradicated when colonization began, yet none of their files had mentioned intelligence. The jungle pressed tighter around him. Vines twisted overhead, blotting out the sky, and fungi the size of shields sprouted from rotting trunks. He cut his way forward, careful to leave minimal trace, though some part of him suspected stealth was meaningless now. If the predator wanted him dead, he would be nothing more than meat in its jaws. By midday he reached a ridge overlooking the basin his unit was meant to cross in 2 days. Through binoculars he mapped the terrain. A river splitting into black pools, a fallen tree bridging the current, and beyond, cliffs scarred with mineral veins. The land was valuable. That was why they were here, why the council risked their soldiers. And yet Elias found himself thinking of the beast that bled alone in this wilderness, surviving where machines corroded and drones failed. The radio crackled. His commander's voice barked through static. Ward, report. He thumbed the comms, scouting route clear with minor hazards. Recommend avoiding basin's western edge. Signs of large predator activity. Noted. Extraction path requires we cut through regardless. Proceed with caution. Out. They never listened. To them a scout's job was to deliver data, not judgment. He clicked the comms silent and muttered, "You'll regret that." That evening he built no fire. The jungle glowed faintly with its own bioluminescence, pale blues and greens flickering between ferns. He sat with his back to a tree, ration bar in hand, ears straining. And just as fatigue began to close his eyes, he heard the low crunch of branches. The predator emerged again. No longer staggering, though its movements were deliberate, conserving strength. In the faint glow its wounds shone with the sealant foam he had applied, now hardened into a temporary shield. Its golden eyes fixed on him. Elias held the ration bar high and tossed it gently across the clearing. The beast lowered its head, sniffed, then swallowed the brick whole. Silence lingered. "You know I'm no threat, don't you?" Elias said softly. His words were nonsense to alien ears, yet speaking them calmed the quiver in his chest. "If I wanted you gone, I'd have tried already. And you'd have succeeded if you wanted me gone." The predator rumbled deep in its chest, a vibration Elias felt in his ribs. Slowly, impossibly, it lowered its bulk onto the ground, folding limbs like a colossal hound resting at its master's feet. The sight stole his breath. He forced himself to stay calm, though his instincts screamed at him to run. This was not subjugation. This was trial. The beast chose proximity, not submission. Elias shifted slightly and the golden eyes followed, unblinking. Time stretched. He spoke again, half muttering into the silence. Ashfong. You look like ash and fire. That'll do. The creature exhaled, a sound like bellows venting steam. He wondered if it understood, or if it merely accepted the vibration of his voice as harmless. For 3 nights the pattern repeated. Elias traveled by day, mapping terrain, sending brief updates, and each night the predator returned, sometimes only to sit in silence at the edge of the clearing. Other times it accepted food. Elias noticed the wounds closing, muscles rippling stronger beneath plated hide. And stranger still, the jungle seemed to empty around them. Creatures that once stalked the undergrowth vanished, paths cleared as though nothing dared approach while the beast lingered near. On the 4th day he set out earlier than planned, skirting a ridge where cliffs dipped sharply into ravines. He was halfway across a ledge when movement erupted below. Raiders. Humanoid but taller, their hides scaled, weapons strapped across their backs. They were no part of the expeditionary force. Poachers, mercenaries, scavengers, whoever they were, they had spotted him. The first shot scorched rock inches from his head. Elias dove, rolled, and returned fire with practiced precision. His rifle spat burst, striking one raider square in the chest, sending it tumbling. But there were more, far more, scrambling up the cliffside with plasma blades. He retreated along the ledge, mind racing. Scouts fought when they must, but this was slaughter waiting to happen. The raiders closed in, growling in their guttural tongue, weapons glinting. One hurled a net that sparked as it expanded, designed to fry nervous systems. Elias dodged barely, his pack seared. He reached the cliff's edge, no retreat left. The raiders spread into a crescent, savoring their kill. Then the forest behind them erupted. A roar split the air, deeper than thunder, older than war. Branches exploded outward as the predator charged, 6 limbs pounding earth, golden eyes ablaze. It hit the first raider with bone-shattering force, snapping him in 2. Another swung a blade only to be seized in jaws that sheared steel like paper. The raiders screamed, fear lancing through them, and scattered in panic. Elias froze, heart hammering. The predator stood between him and the enemy, massive shoulders heaving, blood from fresh kills dripping across its plates. The surviving raiders fled shrieking into the jungle, leaving weapons behind. Silence returned, heavy and raw. Slowly the beast turned back toward him. Ashfang's golden eyes narrowed, not with hunger but with something sharper, recognition. Elias lowered his rifle. His voice broke into a shaky laugh. Guess you didn't like them either? The predator huffed, a gust that nearly knocked him off the ledge, and stepped closer. Close enough that its shadow swallowed him whole. Elias reached into his pack, pulled free another ration bar and held it up. His hand trembled, not from fear but from awe. The beast leaned down, teeth glinting, and took the bar delicately from his palm. Warm breath washed over his skin, carrying the scent of blood and ozone. Elias exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For the first time he knew this bond was no accident of circumstance. The predator had saved him when it could have let him die. Loyalty born not from chains or dominance, but from a moment of choice. Ashfang settled onto its haunches beside him, chest still rumbling faintly, and for the first time in his life Elias Ward felt what it meant to be truly seen by something the galaxy feared. He stared into the golden eyes, realization heavy as the jungle air. He was no longer a scout walking alone. From this point forward, every step he took would echo with the tread of a nightmare at his side. By the time Elias rejoined the main column, whispers had already spread. Scouts returned lean and dirty, but not shadowed by silence. His every step felt marked, the air strangely absent of bird shrieks or predator calls. The alien auxiliaries noticed first. They muttered in their clicking tongues, pupils narrowing when their gaze drifted to the treeline behind him. Even when nothing appeared, they shifted nervously, claws twitching near their weapons. Elias ignored them, for he had learned that silence was as much an ally as honesty. Ashfang lingered unseen, moving as though part of the jungle itself, emerging only at dusk to claim food from his hand. Each night, its loyalty grew sharper, like a blade honed through fire. The council observers arrived 2 days later. Their vessel descended in a blaze of white light, casting long shadows across the camp. 4 delegates emerged, cloaked in shimmering armor that reflected more wealth than Elias would see in a lifetime. Their expressions were cold, their gazes cutting past the human ranks as if searching for flaws. "You've led us along a dangerous path," one delegate declared, voice ringing through the translator device. "This world shelters more than minerals. It shelters nightmares. We've received reports." Elias stood before them, boots muddy, uniform ragged. "Reports don't always capture truth. The jungle is dangerous, yes. That's why you send scouts." The tallest delegate leaned closer, narrow eyes gleaming. "And what of the predator? The one your transmissions failed to mention in full detail?" Elias measured his reply. The memory of Ashfang tearing through raiders still lingered like a brand on his mind. "I encountered something. Apex class, heavily armored. But it did not attack me." The council stirred, whispering sharp syllables among themselves. One laughed, the sound thin as glass. "No predator spares prey. If it lives it must die. That is law." Elias bit back the urge to spit. Law written by people who've never seen beyond their own walls. This creature chose otherwise. That night, by the fireside, murmurs thickened. Soldiers leaned close, voices low. "Ward's gone soft," one muttered. "He should have put a bullet in its skull when he had the chance." Another countered, "Or maybe he's telling the truth. Whatever keeps those other things away, it's working." Elias said nothing. He only felt the shift in air when Ashfang approached, unseen but present. The soldiers fell silent, their laughter choked off. They stared into the trees, and though no shape emerged, their hands shook near their rifles. The following morning the jungle tested them. A squad moved ahead of the column, only to stumble into a nest of spined lizards. The creatures lashed out with tails like spears, sending one soldier sprawling. Panic followed, weapons firing wildly. Elias broke into a sprint, shouting orders. But before the creatures could strike again, Ashfang descended. It came like a storm, shoulders splitting foliage, limbs crashing down. The spined lizards shrieked once before being torn apart. Soldiers stared in stunned silence as the beast planted itself between them and danger. Elias stepped forward, raising a hand. "Stand down. It's not here for us." The squad obeyed reluctantly, rifles lowering in trembling hands. The council delegates arrived moments later, eyes wide with disgust. "You brought it here?" the tallest snapped. "You endanger every one of us." Elias squared his shoulders. "No. It protects us." The words hung heavy, almost absurd in their weight. But none could deny what they had witnessed. The predator stood tall, golden eyes sweeping across the soldiers, daring any threat to advance. Not one creature stirred within the jungle. The council spat orders. "Prepare the nets. The beast dies before it turns on us." Ashfang rumbled, plates along its spine rising like jagged mountains. Soldiers hesitated. They had seen what it could do. Yet council authority carried weight that broke weaker wills. Nets were fetched, plasma charges armed. Elias moved to block them. "You don't understand," he said, voice raw. "It chose this. I didn't chain it. I didn't bribe it. I gave food to something wounded and it stayed. If you kill it, you destroy the one ally in this jungle that fears nothing." A hush spread. Even those who mistrusted him could not erase the memory of silence in the predator's wake, the way other horrors slunk back at its presence. The delegate's eyes narrowed. "You would defy us for a beast?" Elias felt Ashfang's shadow at his back, a wall of primal strength. He straightened. "Not for a beast. For a partner." The camp seemed to breathe as one, soldiers caught between orders and instinct. Tension snapped taut as wire. A single spark would ignite violence. But Ashfang did not move. Instead, it lowered itself onto its haunches, exhaling a low growl that vibrated the soil beneath their feet. Not challenge. Statement. It would not strike unless forced. The delegates wavered, sensing the unease ripple through their own escorts. Their certainty faltered. For the first time, Elias felt hope claw against despair. Perhaps even arrogance could bend when faced with truth so undeniable. That night, as firelight flickered across the camp, Elias sat beside Ashfang's massive bulk. The beast's breathing was steady, deep, and he rested his palm lightly against its plated hide. Around them, soldiers kept their distance, glancing often as though torn between awe and terror. Elias whispered, voice nearly lost to the crackle of flame. "You're not just surviving anymore. You're choosing." Ashfang's golden eye slid open, gleaming in the firelight. It fixed on him, unblinking, and Elias felt the weight of something older than law, older than war. loyalty raw and unbreakable. The moment stretched, fragile as glass, until shouts erupted across camp. Plasma nets were being unrolled in the darkness, council escorts moving under cover of shadow. Orders hissed, urgent and sharp. Elias rose, pulse hammering, realization striking like lightning. They would not relent. To them no bond could outweigh law. And soon this fragile alliance would be tested in fire. The nets shimmered faintly in the dark, humming with captured plasma, their edges sparking as they were stretched wide between armored escorts. Elias's gut clenched as he counted them. 6 hunters in the council's employ, each trained to bring down things larger and deadlier than soldiers dared face. Their weapons weren't meant for suppression. They were meant for killing. Ashfang rose at the first hiss of energy. Its plates rattled, a sound like grinding stone, and the jungle seemed to shudder with the vibration. The golden eyes flared, narrowing as the hunters advanced. Soldiers in the camp froze at the sight, caught between instinct to obey and dread of what would follow. Elias moved before fear could pin him. He ran straight to the predator's side, boots churning soil, rifle slung useless across his back. Ashfang's growl shook the ground, but it did not lunge. It watched Elias instead, as if waiting for his command. "You don't have to fight them," Elias whispered, though his voice trembled. "Not unless they make you." The hunters gave no pause. Their nets surged forward, casting brilliant arcs of plasma light across the clearing. The first struck Ashfang's shoulder, crackling as it tightened, sending bolts crawling across plated hide. The beast roared, a sound so deep Elias thought his bones would splinter. It thrashed once, twice, then snapped the net like twine. 2 more fell across its back. Sparks danced, smoke rising from scorched ridges. Ashfang dropped to one knee, muscles locking under the current. The hunters shouted triumph, moving closer to drive spikes into the ground and tether the beast. Elias didn't think. He threw himself at the nearest hunter, slamming shoulder first into the alien's chest. The plasma rod clattered aside, discharging into the dirt. Elias ripped the rifle from his back and fired point blank, searing the ground at the hunter's feet, forcing the others to recoil. "You'll have to go through me first," he shouted, voice ragged. The delegates screamed orders from the shadows. "Subdue him. The beast dies tonight." Ashfang convulsed under the remaining nets, claws tearing furrows in the soil. Its eyes locked on Elias, golden fire burning through pain. With a final heave, it surged upward, dragging the anchors free, snapping a hunter into the air with the flick of a tail. The alien hit a tree with a wet crack. Chaos consumed the camp. Soldiers scrambled, unsure whether to help or flee. Some aimed rifles, then lowered them, hands shaking. Others backed away entirely, unwilling to join the slaughter. Elias stood his ground, breath coming in sharp bursts, rifle raised but unfired. "Don't kill them," he yelled at Ashfang. "Not unless they force it." The predator snarled, but its gaze lingered on him, holding back from the massacre it could unleash. When another net came screaming through the air, Elias swung his rifle and shot it mid-flight. The device burst in a shower of sparks before it touched Ashfang's hide. A hunter lunged at Elias with a blade. Ashfang struck faster. One claw pinned the alien to the ground, but instead of ripping it apart, the beast pressed down just enough to hold. Its restraint was terrifying. Elias's chest tightened with something more than fear. It wasn't instinct guiding the predator anymore. It was choice. The camp grew still. Smoke curled from shattered nets, their glow fading. Hunters groaned, some dragging themselves back, others too stunned to move. The delegates stood rigid, outrage twisting their faces, yet none dared step forward. Elias's voice rang out, hoarse but clear. "You've seen it now. You've seen what I tried to tell you. It's not our enemy. It's loyal." No one answered. The silence pressed heavier than any roar. Even the jungle seemed to wait. Ashfang lowered its massive head beside Elias, plates still smoking from burns. The gesture was unmistakable, a declaration to all who watched. Predator and man stood side by side, united not by chains but by bond. The tallest delegate broke the silence, voice cutting but thinner than before. "You endanger this mission, Ward. That creature is an abomination. If it cannot be destroyed, then both of you will be removed. Do you understand?" Elias met the glare, every muscle taut. "You don't give the orders anymore. Not here." Gasps rippled through the soldiers. Some stared at him with shock, others with something that looked like relief. The weight of council law had pressed on them all, and Elias's defiance cracked it wide. The delegates conferred in hushed tones, their arrogance shaken but not broken. Finally they turned and stalked toward their vessel, vowing judgment would come later. The hunters limped after them, dragging the injured, glaring at Elias and his beast but making no move to strike again. When their lights vanished into the canopy, the camp exhaled. Fires sputtered, rifles lowered. Soldiers drifted away in clumps, murmuring. Some spared Elias a glance of respect, others of fear. But none moved to condemn him. Not now. Ashfang sank onto the earth, body trembling with exhaustion. Elias crouched beside him, running a hand over the scorched plates, wincing at the heat. "You could have killed them all," he whispered. "But you didn't. You stayed with me." The golden eye cracked open, focusing on him, and Elias felt the unspoken truth heavy in the air. Whatever lines had separated man from monster, prey from predator, had burned away in that battle. Something new had been forged in their place. He leaned against the beast's massive shoulder, the heat of its body seeping through his uniform. Around them, soldiers kept their distance as though afraid of breaking the fragile truce. But Elias knew this was no truce. It was a beginning. The council would return, stronger, determined to tear this bond apart. And when they did, it would not only be his loyalty on trial. It would be humanity's. The jungle rustled in the distance, creatures moving once more after the storm. Ashfang rumbled low, steady, a sound not of threat but of promise. Elias closed his eyes, steadying his breath. He had chosen his side. When the clash returned, and it surely would, they would stand together. The raid came at dawn, when mist clung to the forest floor and the camp's fires had guttered to embers. Elias woke to the tremor of the ground, faint but growing stronger, like the beat of a colossal drum. Ashfang stirred beside him, plates rattling as its senses sharpened. The predator's eyes caught the glow of the approaching engines long before the soldiers scrambled to their feet. A column of raider craft burst through the canopy, metal claws tearing branches aside. Their hulls bristled with weapons, scavenged from wars long past but no less deadly for it. Lights swept the camp, blinding in the half-dark, and amplified voices thundered promises of slaughter. The council hadn't returned themselves. They had sent someone worse. Mercenaries with no code, no restraint, bought with the promise of blood and plunder. Elias seized his rifle, but his eyes weren't on the weapons. They were on Ashfang. The beast crouched low, nostrils flaring, every muscle tensed. Elias placed a steadying hand against its hide. "With me. We hold the line." The first barrage screamed into the camp. Explosions tore tents apart, flinging soldiers into the air. Screams rose in the smoke, but Elias pushed through the chaos, shouting orders. "Form ranks. Cover the wounded. Don't break." His voice cut through the panic like a blade. Men and women clung to it, rallying, falling into position despite their fear. Ashfang leapt forward with a roar that drowned the engines. It slammed into the first raider squad that touched the ground, scattering armored figures like toys. Claws ripped steel apart, tails lashed, and for a heartbeat the mercenaries faltered. But more poured in, wave after wave, nets crackling, rifles blazing. Plasma bolts hammered Ashfang's hide, each one making the predator stagger, but it refused to fall. Elias fired into the oncoming tide, each shot precise, each step forward rather than back. The central raider, clad in jagged black armor, strode from his craft, a massive energy pike in hand. His voice boomed across the battlefield. "So this is the beast they whispered of. And the man who calls it his pet. You'll both bleed today." Elias squared his shoulders, heart pounding but gaze unbroken. "You'll have to try." The duel began not with words but with fire. The raider commander drove the pike into the earth, releasing a surge that knocked soldiers sprawling. Elias barely rolled aside, searing pain flashing up his arm where the energy licked skin. Ashfang lunged, jaws snapping shut inches from the commander's head, but a shield flared, forcing the beast back. Elias scrambled to his feet, firing at the shield's emitters. Sparks flew, weakening its glow. "Now Ashfang," he bellowed. The predator struck with impossible force, breaking through the barrier in a cascade of shattered light. Claws raked across armor, tearing chunks away. The commander snarled, swinging the pike into Ashfang's ribs, electricity cracking through its plates. The beast roared in agony, collapsing to one knee. "No!" Elias's chest burned, but he hurled himself forward, ramming the butt of his rifle into the commander's visor. The alien reeled, helmet fracturing. Rage contorted his features, and he turned his fury on Elias, blade raised high. Ashfang surged back to its feet, intercepting the strike. The pike drove into plated hide, but instead of falling, the predator locked the weapon between its ridges and wrenched it free. With a whip of its tail, it shattered the weapon in half. The commander staggered, unarmed, as Elias pressed his rifle to the alien's chest. For a moment, silence fell, the battlefield frozen. Elias's voice carried, raw and unyielding. "This bond, you wanted to break it. You thought loyalty could be bought or beaten down. But it's stronger than your greed. Stronger than your fear." He pulled the trigger. The commander collapsed, armor sparking, lifeless. The raiders hesitated, their leader's body sprawled in the mud. Ashfang bellowed, towering above them, golden eyes blazing like suns. The sound rolled across the field, primal and commanding, and the mercenaries faltered. One by one they broke. Engines screamed as craft lifted, retreating into the sky, leaving weapons and wounded behind. The camp was battered, bloodied, but not destroyed. Survivors dragged the injured to safety, soldiers leaning on one another, their faces a mix of exhaustion and awe. And through it all, their eyes kept flicking to Elias and the beast that stood beside him. Ashfang sank heavily to the ground, sides heaving, wounds smoking from burns and cuts. Elias dropped to his knees, pressing both hands to its massive head. "You held with me," he whispered, voice breaking. "You never let go." The predator's eyes closed, but the rumble in its chest was steady, a sound of trust. Elias rested against it, bloodied and shaking, yet unbroken. Around him, soldiers gathered, not with fear this time, but with reverence. They saw not a man and his monster, but a partnership that had turned the tide against impossible odds. When the council came again, they would not only face Elias. They would face an army that had witnessed what loyalty could do, between soldier and beast, between human and predator. Elias lifted his gaze to the smoke-streaked sky, determination hardening in his chest. "Let them come," he murmured. "We're ready." The forest answered with silence, deep and eternal, as if acknowledging the pact that had been written in blood and fire. Elias and Ashfang bound forever, man and predator standing as one.